Welcome back to BT. Language is an integral part of culture, but sadly, Indigenous communities have been fighting for decades to preserve their languages and dialects that have been threatened by historic systemic barriers that we are familiar with. Here to discuss how Indigenous communities can preserve their language for future generations is Claudette Commanda, Executive Director of First Nations Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers. Claudette, good morning. Welcome to BT. It's great to see you. Thank you for doing this.
I said good morning, and it's such a beautiful day.
Thank you very much for that, and right back at you. Let's start with this. As best you can, help us understand the different umbrellas identified in Indigenous languages. Like how vast is it?
Oh, there's diversity among the languages. There are, and I will speak to you about First Nations, the First Nation languages. There is also the Inuktitut, and then there's the Michif. But what I'm presenting here to you are the First Nation languages. There are 10 linguistic families across Canada, which comprises of all the nations and the language families in each of these nations. And within even a language family, for example, the Algonquin, I speak my language, Algonquin, and Anishinaabe, Moin. And within the Algonquin Nation, our language, we have the root language. However, there's diversity in the dialect from community to community. So our languages across Canada, from nation to nation, coast to coast to coast, diverse, many different languages. Diversity among the language families, diversity, the dialects are also a part of that diversity.
Claudette, how have the Indigenous community in general tried to maintain their languages and their culture specifically? And in what ways systemically have they run into issues in an attempt to do that?
Well, let's start first of all with the latter part of your question. There's the issue of resources. That's number one. The resources with respect to financial support, and also the resources, the human capacity resourcing. We are losing our language speakers rapidly. And that is why it is so important that we revise, revitalize, protect, promote our languages. What our communities need are our language teachers. It is so critical, it is so important that we utilize those speakers. Another challenge is that it's expected that our speakers need to have papers, like a PhD, to teach the language. Like my grandmother always said, you do not need a PhD to speak your language. Your language, it's natural. Your language, you're born with it. You learn your language at the home base. And we need to utilize those speakers in our communities. What are we doing to protect our language? It's so critical to promote and protect our languages, regardless of where we are located, regardless of the nation, but it speaks about diversity of needs. The communities are in a better position to know what are those immediate language needs, and as well as the long-term language needs. And we have to continue working every day to ensure that our languages remain, so the protection and the promotion of our languages is long-term, ongoing, forevermore. Some of there's language nests, language teachings in daycare, in primary schools, also in high schools, adult learning, train the trainer, for example, training language speakers, training curriculum developers to create those language resources that are needed, to record the language speakers, to record the elders. So by recording the language, you bank the language, and the language is there as a resource. So really important. But I emphasize that the needs of language protection and how they promote and protect their language varies from community to community. For those communities that no longer have a language, they borrow a language from their neighboring community that speaks the same language as they do. And those speakers or curriculum developers or language resource people, they come into that particular community and they help them to build a language. You build a program. You develop the program and you deliver the program. And language is also part of culture, and culture is part of language. We do not separate the two. And this is why more and more of our communities in their education system, but also from a community perspective, it's land-based education, returning to the land, learning those cultural skills, the ancestral knowledge that's contained in our language is that is why it's so important that our languages are protected and promoted, because it contains the core of our identity, our heritage, our culture, and the vast traditional knowledge that we have had since time immemorial. And our connection to the land is so important.
Claudette, we have a couple minutes left. There are two official languages in this country, French, English. No Indigenous language federally, legally, is recognized as official. Do you think that will ever change?
I hope it changes. I hope that there are many First Nation languages across Canada. So the argument is you cannot take 60 different Aboriginal languages and make them official. No, maybe perhaps you cannot do this. However, our languages need to be recognized as the first and original languages of this land called Canada. They are the first languages. They were created here and they will be here. We have nowhere else in the world to go to learn our language but here, where we were created on this land. Our languages need to be given the equal recognition and respect as English and French.
Claudette Commanda, we appreciate your time. It's a big week, National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. We've had a lot of conversations this week, but the conversation around how people have conversations, I think, is important conversation, for lack of a better way to put it. So, Claudette, we learned a lot today. Thank you very much for coming by. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.